Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today from the West Coast, and let me say he's not a West Coaster. He's a normal guy that happens to live out there. Tom Walls from the Firearms Academy of Seattle. This, of course, our Training Friday program. I want to mention as we get going, if you're watching us live on the Facebook or YouTube channel for the Polite Society podcast, comment on those videos. We'll get them. I'll get them up on the air, and we'll discuss them. If you're watching us anywhere else, if you're watching us on OpsLens, on Rumble, anywhere else, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. And by the way, if you are catching us on Rumble, please do make sure you subscribe to the channel. I want to hit 25 subscribers so we can stream live and you don't have to wait for your comment to come in the next day. So, lots of check-ins coming. Thank you for that, Tom. Our topic today, we really didn't have one until the middle of this week, and then you came up with defense other than armed. In other words, what happens if you can't go to your gun? And I like that. To get started with, I don't have it loaded in my software. I didn't have enough time to prep today, but I remember a video that became viral this summer where there was a bodega and there was a guy that was ranting and was obviously intoxicated, just insulting and berating everybody. And rather than using a lethal form of attack weapon, the guy in line beside him, when this guy turned and started paying attention to him, hit him with a damn twisted tea can. And I
remember that video. That was awesome.
Yeah, and it drives home that whatever you have in your hand can be a weapon. Now, I'll say this: don't swing it if you're going to use a twisted tea. The way it was done was, I'll grab this full can of soda here. The way he put the twisted tea in his hand like this and swung. Don't do it like that. Do it like this and swing. So you've got the impact here that will be your force multiplier. All he did was split the can, didn't do much real damage at all. The guy went down, came right back up. If you'd have hit him like this, different story. So
it's interesting. You know, we all do guns. I'm assuming that people are watching The Bullet because we're gun folks.
Yeah.
So we tend to think of that as the primary response. You know, why should I have to run? You know, I can't run anymore. That's why I carry a gun. Or, you know, bringing knives to gunfights, or whatever the thing is. I carry one 24/7 for that reason. I'm older. I have had so many orthopedic surgeries. I make noise when I run, when I kind of sort of run. But you need some kind of force continuum. You can't always have lethal force legally, but sometimes it's simply not available. We tend to think that we can do the fast draw, you know, the old speed rock technique. We don't need to get the sights up because we're so close. That's great, but the bad guy gets a vote too. And there's all kinds of stuff that is a precursor to that. So just because we only have a weapon that's a gun doesn't mean we can't have other skills. And that's really worth talking about today. It's not to replace our firearm skills. It's to allow us to employ our firearm skills, or to allow us to avoid needing to use our firearm skills, which I think is equally valuable. There are more known, can I phrase this? Help me out here, Paul. More self-defense situations that do not require the firing of a gun.
Yes.
Where the gun is legally, even the CDC came out and said roughly it's 500,000 times a year, with Professor Kleck almost tripling that number in his studies. So we need to add that to the toolbox. I know that my friend Grant Cunningham hates the term "the toolbox," but I think everybody everybody knows what we mean by that.
Yeah.
We have something else in our bag of tricks that we can pull out quickly. So that implies some training, not just I read this sometime.
Yes, absolutely. Get a couple comments in here real quick.
You had comment eyes.
Yeah. Twisted T EDC from George.
I bet there's some custom holster makers and leather folks out there that could really set you up with some cool stuff. God knows they're out there.
Good friend Yehuda Reamer, the Pew Pew Jew. He had, and I'm not kidding you, he had a holster maker make him a holster because he's this requires a little bit of explanation here. As a Jewish person, he has a special diet he follows. He eats kosher. And quite often when he goes somewhere, kosher isn't available. Unfortunately, that was the case when we did Gun Rights Policy Conference at AMCON. So he had this holster manufacturer make him a bagel holster. So he could carry a bagel with him when he wanted to eat and he couldn't eat. He had that. So, yeah. So, yeah, you can get holsters made into anything. Yes.
If Rob Leahy is watching this and is back from SHOT Show, Rob Simply Rugged could probably get a market for that. So the whole thing, getting back to the topic at hand, the whole thing assumes you know what's going on. So talking to probably the only two people on the planet that are gun people that have never heard of Dennis Tooler, the Tooler drill, the Tooler principle. We all know it's not a rule. By way of review, if you have Google foo skills, Google up SWAT magazine, Dennis Tooler, Tueller. The name of the article, March 1983. How close is too close? The story behind it. Dennis Tooler was the firearms trainer for, I'm looking at my notes here because I don't want to get it wrong, Salt Lake City Police Department in Utah. And they were going through his guys, and they happened to be taking a break, and they happened to be at the 7-yard line. And one of the questions that came up during the break was, how close is too close? You know, if somebody's got a contact weapon, a knife is commonly thought of. It could be a baseball bat, could be a stick with a nail in it. How close are they that they're a threat? And Dennis, being a thoughtful guy, went, well, we happen to be at 7 yards. We know we'll do this drill. How fast can you, and this was done with law enforcement officers in a retention holster, so they had to manipulate the retention devices. I don't know how common those were in 1983, but that's usually how it's taken to be. So how fast from the stimulus, the whistle, whatever, or the buzzer or the timer, can you draw and fire and get a hit at, well, we happen to be at 21 feet, 7 yards, so let's just arbitrarily do that for a place to start. We don't have to move around. And the average was about a second and a half. I've
Which
run
is
a lot of
pretty respectable.
That's a good skilled practitioner. I'm not fast. I am certainly not a fast guy. On a good day, I'm running about a second and a half, maybe a tenth or two better than that if I'm warmed up. But cold, okay. So that's where that came from, and then they found that an adult from a standstill could go about that same distance, and it was a happy coincidence, in about a second and a half. And of the literal hundreds and hundreds of people that I've personally seen do the drill, I've seen people more banged up than me, one guy with a busted up hip that was waiting for surgery, do it in 2.1 seconds. I've seen young athletic guys, not necessarily the skinny ones. I've seen like football player size guys do it in 1.3. So you've got a reasonable idea. So that gave them something to work with and all the sequelae of the Tooler principle or Tooler drill and how it's driven law enforcement policy. Here's the deal. The person with the gun that was going to draw knew what was going to happen, had pre-planned their response, so all that reaction time in the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, had already been done. He was ready. He already had observed, and he already decided what he was going to do. That was pretty simple, okay? And he'd been oriented, and all he had to do when he heard the buzzer was do that last thing, already planned. Bad guys don't tend to give a lot of warning. They're the ones that set the time and place, and they generally do it from ambush. So first off, in your bag of tricks should be some way to recognize as best you can the situation as it may develop and to do what you can to avoid it, or at least buy yourself more time. There's lots of good stuff out there. I know the ACLDN, Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, has an entire DVD for their members on pre-attack indicators. A lot of instructors do some really good work with that. Information is available on the net, and after a while you see patterns. But if you can avoid that and buy that time for that close contact, or maybe simply go elsewhere, that's an essential skill. Don't let your ego get in the way. I have a gun. I don't need to run. I can go wherever I need to. No, that's not a wise thing.
Right. Well, and let me get, because I believe, let me preface this, but if you're watching on Facebook, sometimes I don't get your name in. I believe this is Marty Hayes commenting. But just gives me Facebook users, all gives me, for ACLDN, we've had 40 instances over the years, but only 3 shootings. So even in the point where it goes to the police are getting involved, and we've got a real issue here. The majority of the time, gun may be displayed, but it may not be fired, and the majority of the time, I guess, only
That's
3 shootings.
Outcome.
Yeah.
I really don't want to ever have to shoot anybody.
No, me too.
God, even Mr. Miyagi said, what's the best block? Don't be there. My martial arts instructors back in the 70s were saying that. It's been around a while. You read Musashi's Book of 5 Rings, or Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu would say the best battle is the one you never have to fight.
Right.
So if you can avoid it, awesome. You don't get caught up, because if you are that close to somebody and it's a deadly force situation, you're behind the curve because they've already initiated. You have to catch up. You have to observe and orient, which we'll talk about in a minute, and decide based on where you can orient, and then act and hope that it works. And that takes literally a quarter to a half of a second, which is a really long time in a close contact situation.
Well, and let's talk close contact a little bit. Let's go back to that twisted T that I opened the show with. If you're at that distance, if you're within 6 feet of somebody and they start showing signs they're going to attack, going to your gun may not be the best option. At the very least, you want to keep that at very close range. You don't want to extend out when they're not that darn far away from you.
No, and there are retention techniques. I've got a dummy gun here. I always do when we teach. Chunk of plastic. So a retention position would be something in close with the slide away so it doesn't foul the action of the gun. But you still got to get the thing out of your holster. Hopefully it's a holster you can draw quickly from. It's not like I've got a pocket holster right now.
Right.
You've got all that stuff going on. I don't want to be that close. That's like I am way behind the curve. That's fixing something that's pretty bad broke. So ideally, I would like to catch things beforehand. Catch the behaviors, the pre-attack indicators. You said 6 feet. By way of explanation, one reason that I teach the handgun retention is because I taught martial arts for a number of years and have instructor certs and formal, like when I say formal, I mean over a year at a time, education in 4 martial arts now. And a lot of them emphasize footwork just as much as boxing would, as much as Asian stuff does. So the limitations of close quarter stuff is difficult. Most martial arts will say a danger distance is about 1.5 steps away. Mark McYoung has some really good stuff on that. Mark the Animal McYoung. Because you can lunge quickly if you've got your balance right and movement skills. You can lunge in quickly and cover the distance of about 1.5 steps pretty quickly before somebody can see what's going on, make whatever body changes, decide what to do in an act. That same reaction time that takes longer than it does to act. So if you don't give away what you're going to do, you can hit the guy and they can't stop you. So you need to keep that distance, and that's a societal thing too. Different cultures have different comfort levels. You know, I'm North American all the way, so my distance is going to be different than somebody from a Latin American country or a European country where those things tend to be different, and you have to know what culture you're in.
Yeah. Gerald says create more distance.
Distance is your friend, Gerald. You got that right.
Yeah. Another one. This is another one from Facebook. I don't know the name, but just a Facebook user. Oh, Michael says, I'm too old for martial arts. I know gun fu. Tom, you are taking a new martial art. Tell us about that.
Well, first off, let me talk about gun fu. There actually is a thing. We call it Ching Ching Pao.
Ching Ching Pao? I like that.
Pao. It's kind of a running gag, but yeah, gun fu works well. I taught Taekwondo for, Diane and I both, for like 13 years, and have a belt that's black with a bunch of stripes on it. I have studied Judo formally. I have studied Kajukenbo and Hwarangdo, and they all teach slightly different ways of approaching things. The ones that were most useful were the close contact stuff, the things that work with grappling, the things that work with joint techniques, the things that work with infighting. So, as my wife and I have gotten older and accumulated a long history of orthopedic joint replacements, we need to work on flexibility and balance as much as anything else. I can hit you just fine, but I need to be able to do that. So we're currently, and for the last over a year, studying Tai Chi Chuan at the local Kung Fu school, which has worked wonders for the balance and the movement skills, even though I considered myself reasonably proficient. So there are things you can do. There are things beyond that. If you don't want to do things where the techniques have funny names, you know, like grasp the swallow's tail, and the names are there because the movement, you have to remember, it's not like movement 17. I studied one martial art for a number of years where the movements were numbered, where the techniques were numbered. I couldn't remember. They had no connection. So the funny names in the martial arts are kind of a mnemonic. If I do this, it looks like a monkey. Oh, let's call that the monkey technique. It's just evocative for whatever's going on. But Tai Chi has been really good for that. Another thing, if you don't or have it available, dancing, ballroom dancing, whatever. Think of that. You've got balance and movement and turning and twisting and all that stuff. I have had martial arts students that were dancers that did exceptionally well because they had movement skills. I have had gymnasts. I had a couple of gymnasts, a brother and a sister, that were amazing because they had movement skills. So something other than standing on your hind legs and shooting at a paper target downrange.
Well, and think about you. The bad guy isn't going to line up for you and be right at that 7-yard mark or the 5-yard mark. They're not going to make it easy for you. There may be, you have to, in order to get a clear spot behind the person you may have to shoot, you're going to have to move, probably. If they're robbing a store and they've got themselves a gun pointing at the clerk and you don't want to be lined up where it's you, bad guy clerk. You may have to move.
Got to think about the backstop. Another problem, let's call it a limitation. A limitation with range work. I've seen some stuff and I've done the training and given the training where we're right like this far away from the target. We're literally bad breath distance, which is fairly realistic. Get off the X, back up, go off on a diagonal and shoot. Another option, because I can't back up fast enough to get away from a guy with a gun. I can't backpedal faster than the bullet. I can't backpedal faster than he can run at me with a knife or a sharp stick. I think we can do a visual here. Okay. So let's say this is my target. I'm coming up on camera. Okay. If I'm going to eventually shoot at my target, I've got to have a backstop back here, right? I've got to have the berm or something, a bullet trap. So I'm limited as to what I can do. As a martial arts guy, my thing is to come around the rear quarter and get behind the guy. Well, that's a problem if you're shooting, because now I'm shooting up range. So that's one of the limitations we have with the shooting iterations. Those movement skills make a tremendous difference. If I can get to somebody's backside or directly behind them, they can no longer see me directly, and I have a positional advantage, and I can do all kinds of stuff. I can hit them in the head and run. I can, if I've got just a blade, I can, like Mark McYoung says, cut your way out of the fight and leave. Or I can simply leave. There's all kinds of options open up once you have that position of advantage, rather than, nose to nose, bad breath distance, and, out testosterone the other guy.
Yeah.
But the movement skills are essential.
I believe this is a Tai Chi. I'm not a martial arts guy. I did a little bit of Taekwondo when I was like 18.
Yeah.
But and I stopped before I was 19. But Chicken Hawk Swoops Down was my personal favorite. Is that one you're aware of?
That's not one I'm familiar with. That just the name alone sounds cool. I'll trade you. I'm a real fan of the Tai Chi people go, yeah, that's cool. Of parting or shearing the wild horse's mane is a wonderful disarm technique that puts you behind somebody, and it's got the thing about Tai Chi, it's got different possibilities, so you can do them as defensive throws, strikes, grasps, whatever. It's moving into a position in a balanced state.
Okay.
But you can apply it to all kinds of stuff. My primary martial arts were hard style. I can apply that and take the soft style stuff. But again, getting away from just talking, spending time with the gi on and working the floor, something that gives you movement skills, something that allows you to have some way of getting out of that bad place where you're right in front of the guy who has given himself that advantageous position and overcoming it. So just to backtrack, we talked about the distance. We talked about the ability to go through that OODA loop, to observe, orient, decide, and act. Have that pre-planned practice rather than say, oh, yeah, I read an article in Guns and Ammo about a guy or saw a video. You don't have time for that. You need to pre-plan these. You need to rehearse them. Give yourselves a couple of options and just play that tape. Push the button that says, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Move left, move right, move backwards. Get it to work for you some way, and then modify that in the process. And then you've got to have the movement skills and hopefully something to follow up with. There was a video I've referred to before, and I haven't been able to find it since. Security video, gas pumps at a little stop and rob. I'm not even sure if it was from the United States, but good guy comes up in the dark. He's pumping gas in his car. Bad guy comes up, starts harassing him. They get into a physical altercation. Good guy happens to be a BJJ guy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a fantastic grappling art. Unfortunately, good guy got bad guy down on the ground in an arm bar. Well, he's tied up. He's got both his hands tied up in the arm bar, and there's no referee to call the point. And the bad guy's not going to tap out. What the bad guy did on video was, with his free arm that wasn't barred up, pulls a knife, starts stabbing the good guy in the upper thigh and the inner thigh, and the good guy died, bled out.
Oh, wow.
So what I would add as a caveat to all the stuff we've talked about is you need to stay mobile. I do not like to go to the ground. Grappling is a wonderful thing, but the mobility is a problem, and especially if there's more than one bad guy, and we know statistically 40 to 50% of the time that happens.
Yeah.
That you've got one or more accomplices who would love to play soccer with your noggin. I want to be able to leave. I want to be able to get out. If I can hurt somebody or make them think, the old fat bald guy, maybe I don't want to mess with him. I'll mess with somebody else, because they're going to look for the easiest target. And remember, in their world, they can be prey to their compadres, their bad guy compadres. They can become victims quickly because they don't have that sense of decency among themselves. So they don't want to risk being hurt either.
One recent, we do defensive gun use DGUs on Polite Society podcast every week. One that recently came up that comes to mind is, let's just say the bad guy picked the wrong county to be in when he wanted to rob a gas station. He goes in to the gas station. He's got women's panties around his neck. When he's going to go up to when he's going up to the cashier to He picked up a can of soda. He puts the panties over his face so his eyes are still out, but the center of the face is blocked. And it pulls out a knife, starts to rob, and well, there's a good guy with a gun in the store, pulls it out, drop the knife. Another guy in the store runs out the door, goes to his car, grabs his gun to come in and help the good guy that acted first. There's a third guy at the store pumping gas, grabs his gun to help out. So, wrong damn store, but there's a getaway driver that happened to be the bad guy's girlfriend. And when the police got there, they arrested bad guy, and they found and arrested bad guy's getaway driver, his girlfriend. So, there's almost always someone else there. Let me get this comment up because it's great. I love this comment, and I want you to comment on it. John wants to know, ankle holster if you go to the ground?
Oh, yeah. I'm not personally using ankle holsters because I don't like to go to the ground. It's my personal choice based on physical condition. If you're grappling, a backup gun on an ankle holster is a really cool thing to do. You need to practice with it on the ground, but yeah, awesome choice.
And I'm not anti-ankle holster. I own one.
Like I say, it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
For a driver, like you were previously in your other life, we've played with this at FAS. Put one on an ankle holster in the driving position, and say you're right-handed, so it's on the inside of your left ankle. Someone approaches your window, and you simply reach down. You can get your hand on that gun and free any snaps and have it in your hand, and it's not noticeable from the outside. As
I'm going to
opposed
say, practice that.
Or under a shoulder holster. Yeah, practice. Always practice.
Simply
don't go back. I saw it from the video last week, so I could probably do it. No, you need to practice it. Your brain and your nervous system and your muscles need to get together and talk about it a bunch of times.
If you happen to have a brand new Corvette, that box that your feet go in is a lot smaller than a Volvo 870 tractor trailer. So no matter what, if you're going to do that, please practice it.
Especially if you have boxes of top secret documents somewhere in that, that particular vehicle.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not anti-ankle holster, but practice. If you are wearing an ankle holster because you want to be able to get to it when you're in your vehicle, practice with it in your vehicle so you know if it's practical to do it or not. I could probably draw in my RAV4. I could not draw from an ankle holster in my wife's Camry. Two entirely different.
And that comes back to a disadvantaged position. You're in a the seated position. Seatbelt could. I carry pretty much at the 3 or 4 o'clock position, depending on the rig. On my strong side, which is my right side, so as a driver, I've got the seatbelt on top of it. If I strap that over top of my jacket, it's a real slow, difficult, awkward, fumbly kind of draw.
Yeah.
Gotta think about that. So again, like you said, go through it, of course, safely with an unloaded gun, or better still, a dummy gun that fits your holsters. Another option, if you want to think close quarters in a vehicle, is a shoulder holster. But then again, you've got to draw so you don't cross your own brachial artery. All kinds of options, but you have to actually go through and see the strengths and weaknesses and be able to do it without thinking about it. Because I guarantee you, if you've got a violent confrontation that's imminent or already happening, you're not going to have a lot of brain cells readily available to figure out a new problem.
Yep.
You want to have your brain say, "Oh, I've been here before. I know what to do." Or as Colonel Cooper said in one of his great videos, "I knew this would happen someday, and I know what to do about it."
We are right at the bottom of the hour. We got to get out of here. I'm telling you, man. We should make these things 2 hours, but on our way out the door, what's going on? Firearms Academy of Seattle, we should be, in the next week or two, starting to crank things up, right?
We are. We've got, I just had this calendar up here. We're we're actually starting to fill our classes. I was talking to our director and owner, Bill McCormick, just like yesterday, and she's telling me we've got a bunch of them that are full. We're still got a couple places in February toward the, no, I'm looking at the calendar right here. Beginning of March, we still have our one-day level 1 rifle, which is like, this is the rifle, this is how you hold it, and then the same thing with a shotgun one-day intro classes. We still have some spots with, but we're starting to fill up already. I'm thinking, as we talked about a month ago, that the new folks that got their guns for Christmas, either for themselves or someone gave them to them, are starting to realize, I need to get some training, and we're starting to see those folks come in. But check out the website. We're teaching all through the end of the year, www.firearmsacademy.com.
Very cool. On my end, I want to remind everybody we are going to be live tomorrow, noon Central Time, for the weekend edition of The Bullet. Lots of news to cover. Lots of things happened, including some actor got in a little bit of trouble in New Mexico. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. Also, a lot of stuff to get to. But do come join us, noon Central Time. It's going to be Charlie Cook, Tony Simon, and Rob Morris. We're going to go over the news of the week. And please join us. So that's going to do it for today. Until next time, everybody, thanks for watching. And